Welcome to this deep dive. We're here to break down the sources you send us and pull out the key knowledge.
That's right.
Today, we're jumping into a really interesting YouTube discussion with Clif High. It's all about, well, the digital world, technology. It gets pretty complex.
It really does.
Yeah.
And what's compelling about this source is just how broad it is. It's not just, a straight analysis.
Right.
It goes all over, from YouTube algorithms to some pretty mind-bending ideas about future tech.
Exactly. And you sent this in wanting to get up to speed quickly on the digital landscape, right? Understand the forces at play. So our mission is basically to unpack the crucial bits about online content, those hidden dynamics, and how tech and society are, well, constantly changing each other.
Sounds like a plan. So where do we start?
Well, the original source kicks off talking about YouTube, how it's changed.
Yeah, the hosts there mention algorithms, big tech.
Yeah.
The usual suspects, I guess.
Right. But Clif High had this view from way back, like 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
He saw Google buying YouTube and thought it spelled trouble for independent creators. Called it a retirement home for old stream media.
A retirement home, meaning...
Meaning he thought eventually the independent voices, the smaller channels, would get squeezed out.
And did he say why he thought that? Was it just business?
Not entirely. He suggested it might have been part of a bigger picture, maybe intelligence agencies trying to consolidate social media control.
Wow, okay. That's a big claim.
He even drew a parallel to China's social credit system.
Social credit. Okay, break that down a bit.
Yeah.
What's the core idea for someone who hasn't really looked into it?
Well, the idea is basically that your digital actions, your online behavior, directly affect your real-world life, your access to things.
Like resources, opportunities.
Yeah. Jaime argues the Chinese approach to governing is more about long-term administration, kind of managing the population rather than just, outright conquering.
Okay, so less about tanks and boots on the ground, more about systems and data over time. That seems to be his perspective. He makes a bit of a joke about, if the U.S. wanted long-term control in Iraq, maybe they should ask China how to administer it.
Yeah, right.
But bringing it back to digital, he sees social credit as this mechanism. Resources get allocated based on how you behave online, how much you toe the line, essentially.
And it doesn't matter who you are socially, your background.
According to him, no. Not race, identity, status. Just your online conduct, your digital footprint.
That's a really key takeaway. How you act online has real consequences.
Absolutely. And this is where he makes it sound quite critical for anyone online today. He says being digitally ignorant, just not paying attention, could be genuinely risky.
How so?
Because algorithms can pick up on your, let's say, social blunders online, even accidental ones, and amplify them. You end up with these digital demerits.
Digital demerits, like a negative score.
Kind of a skewed digital karma, as he puts it, which can then impact you.
It really feels like we're all being judged constantly by these invisible systems.
That's the worry he expresses. And he stresses that this algorithmic influence, it's already here, and it's just getting stronger.
Okay. Now, I know 5G came up briefly in the source. That's often a controversial topic. What was his angle there?
Yeah, good to clarify. He wasn't, promoting 5G or anything.
Right.
His point was more analytical, how the powers that be, as he calls them, might use it. He suggested potential for gene-level scanning.
Gene-level scanning? How?
Something about the frequencies involved, maybe operating at a DNA level. Similar, he said, to how TSA scanners work, but much finer detail. But he also pointed out the huge costs, economic, energy, environmental.
So an analysis of potential use, not an endorsement. Got it.
Exactly. Okay, so back to YouTube itself. What else do they discuss?
Well, the sheer saturation of the platform, how crowded it is.
Oh, yeah. It's tough out there.
They threw out a statistic, something like 60% of all videos get less than 500 views.
Wow, 60%. Under 500 views. That really kills the go viral overnight dream, doesn't it?
It certainly puts it in perspective. And even if you are established, you have to constantly work, reinvest, churn out content.
Multiple videos a day sometimes.
Yeah.
Just to hold on to your slice of the attention market.
Exactly. And then they talk about how YouTube actually makes its money now.
Which isn't just ads on videos anymore, right?
Apparently not primarily. The argument was that YouTube now makes most of its money monetizing keywords through AdWords.
Oh, so explain that. Advertisers bidding.
Yeah. It creates this bidding war. Advertisers trying to reach similar audiences end up competing for the same keywords.
Aye.
They use a funny example. Someone selling tinfoil hats and someone selling Chinese spy cameras might both bid on conspiracy crap.
Right, but trying to reach that same niche audience.
So advertisers are fighting for space in specific online conversations?
Exactly. But apparently this whole system has its quirks.
Like what?
Well, the example given was someone searching for info debunking conspiracies might get shown ads for tinfoil hats. The targeting isn't always perfect.
Yeah, that's ironic.
And they mentioned stories of smaller advertisers losing serious money because they just didn't understand the ad settings, picked the wrong keywords, that kind of thing.
It sounds really complex. Easy to get wrong for creators and advertisers alike.
It does. And apparently, small advertisers have way less control now than the big corporations. Like, even opting out of certain ad types is harder.
And why are the big corporations even there? On YouTube?
The argument is because traditional media is dying. Newspapers, TV, their reach is shrinking.
So they have to move online to find an audience. Makes sense.
Right. But then, this shift apparently drives a kind of censorship.
How so?
To stop independent creators from contradicting the corporate narratives, the platform tends to push mainstream sources and recommendations.
Ah, okay.
You might see disclaimers on videos with alternative views. They call it manufacturing consent.
So it's not just about profit, it's also about controlling the narrative, shaping what people see.
That's the viewpoint presented, yeah.
Yeah.
And this manipulation isn't just left versus right. They argue. It's more about targeting any viewpoint that seriously challenges the establishment, whatever that establishment is. A conspiracy of survival for the status quo.
A conspiracy of survival. That's a striking phrase.
They mentioned Alex Jones being targeted early on as sort of the start of a broader trend.
Interesting. So it's less about specific politics, more about challenging the system itself.
That's the idea. But then Clif High actually pushed back a bit on the idea of individuals being targeted step by step.
Really? What did he suggest instead?
He thought it was less about who you are specifically and more about when independent, maybe populist voices reach a certain size, a certain level of influence.
So it's hitting a threshold of visibility that triggers the attention, not ticking specific boxes.
That was his take. And then things took a bit of a wild turn.
How so?
He started talking about a much bigger picture, referencing things like past lives.
Past lives.
Okay. Yeah, and the idea that some agendas might operate over centuries, way beyond one human life. He mentioned Obama visiting an Egyptian image, some facial recognition project on historical art.
Whoa.
Based on this idea that facial features could stay consistent across incarnations.
That is definitely a long-term perspective, very metaphysical.
It is. But then the discussion kind of swung back to more grounded tech stuff.
Yeah.
Like the limits and weaknesses within the technology itself.
Meaning
the argument against this idea of perfect, unbreakable tech control. They used Epstein as an example of someone seemingly powerful within a system, but ultimately disposable when he wasn't useful anymore.
Right. Even the operators can get caught in the machinery.
Exactly. But the other host pushed back on that,
Oh.
arguing that the people in charge do care intensely about control. And they face this huge challenge because the tech that enables control also enables liberation, connection, information flow.
So it cuts both ways.
Yeah. And there's this time pressure. Unfettered information could lead to mass mobilization, which they presumably want to prevent.
It's that classic tension, isn't it? Control versus freedom in the digital space.
Absolutely. Which led them to talk about the targeted individual thing.
Right. People who feel they're being specifically harassed by technology or agencies.
Yeah. The take in the source was, while acknowledging that agencies like the NSA can do sophisticated surveillance, Snowden proved that. A lot of the targeted individual claims might, perhaps, stem more from a persecution complex, because actually hacking everyone individually is incredibly difficult and resource-intensive.
So possible in specific high-profile cases, maybe, but probably not happening to millions of ordinary people constantly.
That was the suggestion. They also kind of debunked the TV trope of easily cloning SIM cards.
Oh, yeah. How?
Apparently, the cell network software itself is designed to spot weirdness, like two SIMs with the same ID being in different places at once. They shared a story from, like, the early mobile phone days about a failed cloning attempt.
Good to know Hollywood isn't always accurate on tech details. Shocker.
Right. Then the conversation pivoted to a bigger societal issue.
Which was?
This growing gap between our sort of outdated social structures and the technology we actually have now.
Can you give an example?
They talked about building more trains. Socially useful, right? But today, it gets bogged down in unbelievably complex software systems, competing stakeholders, regulations.
Whereas something like the Panama Canal.
Exactly. A monumental physical task
Yeah.
done with much less digital complexity. It highlights how software, which was meant to solve problems, can sometimes create new layers of difficulty.
So software is eating the world, but now maybe it's eating itself.
That was the idea presented. Different systems battling each other, leading to a general grinding down, maybe inefficiency. The original host even predicted Google and YouTube might become the new MySpace.
The new MySpace.
Right.
Wow, that's bold given how dominant they are.
It is a bold prediction. They even drew a parallel to the chaotic internal structure of the Third Reich, different factions fighting each other, as maybe analogous to how digital systems could destabilize things.
Okay. That's a dark analogy.
Yeah. Then they brought in philosophy, Jean Baudrillard.
Baudrillard. What was the concept?
Living in the materium, where change is the only constant. The idea that maybe winning, like populism versus globalism, isn't the point. It's just constant flux.
So less about final victories, more about ongoing transformation.
Exactly, which connected to this idea of a sci-fi world meeting off-world safety valves, like in Blade Runner, places to go if Earth gets too oppressive.
Like historical frontiers, people moving west or Norwegians going to the Pacific Northwest, as they mentioned.
Right. Historical migrations as escape routes. They even briefly touched on space energies influencing us.
Space energies. Okay, we're really covering ground here.
A brief mention. The main point seemed to be acknowledging humanity needs to be global, but questioning centralized global power.
Yeah.
And emphasizing how long real societal shifts take, like feelings about the British monarchy fading over generations.
These things definitely don't happen overnight. Takes time.
For sure. Then, a really unexpected topic, solar cooling.
Solar cooling, the sun getting colder.
And Earth potentially cooling over the next 60 years or so. They cited NASA reports about Earth's orbit wobbling slightly, the sun's color changing.
Why would that happen?
Attributed to the sun's actual path through space, apparently it's sort of corkscrews influenced by planets and interstellar gas and dust.
Solar cooling. That's definitely not the usual climate change narrative. Very different.
It is. And they linked this potential cooling to possible social shifts, and also, interestingly, to the increasing invasiveness of software smart fridges tracking you.
Right.
Alongside things like Neuralink and transhumanist goals. Though the hosts seem pretty skeptical about Neuralink actually working out.
So grand cosmic cycles potentially interacting with very mundane tech, like smart appliances and futuristic tech like brain interfaces.
Yeah, it's a wild mix. They explained the basic computer loop, always checking for input, needing a common time reference, which led the original host to talk about being fascinated by the dark side of digital.
Dark web, hacking, that sort of thing.
Exactly, highlighting how vulnerable our tech-based society actually is.
Seeing the cracks in the system.
Yeah. And this led to maybe the most surprising concept.
War kitties.
War. Please. As in cats.
Weaponizing house cats. Seriously.
How on earth?
Strapping things like Wi-Fi pineapples on them for reconnaissance, intercepting data, maybe even delivering small jammers or explosives.
You're kidding. Weaponized cats.
They mentioned a supposed real case of a service cat used for digital snooping. Sounds absurd, but it speaks to, individual ingenuity and using what's available, like drones.
Wow. War kitties. Okay.
Yeah.
Memorable.
Definitely. There was also a funny thought experiment. What if an alien AI found our internet? What would it even make of it all?
Probably get stuck watching cat videos for eternity. Like a YouTube algorithm forced to watch 8-hour live streams.
Exactly. Okay, but then they shifted gears to practical advice for content creators, which I know people want to hear.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
For navigating YouTube, what were the tips?
Okay, number 1, pay attention to algorithm updates. Try to figure out why YouTube is making changes.
Makes sense. Stay informed. Then, if you make long videos, cut them up. Create like 12 to 20 short clips, 4 minutes or less is ideal.
From each long video.
Yeah, upload them as separate videos, unique titles, descriptions. The key is maximizing the completion rate. People finishing short clips tells the algorithm they're good.
So short clips get prioritized because people actually watch them all the way through.
That's the idea. They reach a wider audience than maybe the full long video does, even if the long one has dedicated fans. Joe Rogan's clips were the example.
Right, everyone sees the JRE clips.
Crucially, don't make a separate channel for the clips.
No. Why
Use playlists on your main channel. Apparently that's a double bonus for the algorithm. Playlists get views just by being opened, and they attract more ad revenue.
Playlists. Okay, that's a really practical, useful tip.
It seems so. They also speculated a bit about Maybe internal ad fraud at YouTube, employees gaming the system.
Interesting.
And pointed out that if a small channel suddenly gets tons of views, it brings in more advertisers, sure, but the creator might not actually see much more money.
So the economics aren't straightforward. More views doesn't always equal proportionally more cash for the creator.
Apparently not always.
Yeah.
Then there was this idea, sharing will come back.
Meaning?
Sharing across all social media platforms. They described building a circular funnel. YouTube, your website, Twitter, all linking to each other.
Driving traffic between platforms.
Yeah. Specific calls to action, pointing people to specific videos or website pages. Though they noted platforms treat links differently. Twitter wants to keep you on Twitter. Facebook might block direct video plays, etc.
So you need a multi-platform strategy thinking about how each one works.
Exactly. Then, back to Baudrillard briefly. This idea that we're all enmeshed in a system of objects and our attention is the product being sold makes us all kind of complicit.
A bit sobering. We're part of the machine, whether we like it or not.
Yeah. But the final thought on the digital world was that it's it's both hand. But collective action isn't impossible, even from within the system.
Okay. A lot to chew on there about our digital lives. Now let's switch gears completely to Antarctica.
Right. The Antarctica anomaly. This sounds like classic conspiracy theory fodder, almost.
Tell me about it. What's the story?
It's this rumor that's apparently become a widely shared image now of a face in Antarctica, like the face on Mars, but, down south.
Yeah.
Linda Moulton Howe and others have apparently talked about it a lot.
A giant face in the ice. Is it just ice and shadow playing tricks? Pareidolia?
That's the standard explanation, yeah. Pareidolia are brains seeing patterns. But apparently, people looking closely on Google Earth say they see features that look carved, even a second smaller face nearby in a dark patch.
So not just random shapes.
That's the claim, which leads to calls for photo experts, Mars anomaly-type researchers to look at it, and also questions about Google Earth maybe blurring things or faking snow cover.
The idea that maybe the images are being deliberately obscured or altered?
That's part of the intrigue, yeah. Someone suggested it could be a huge Nazca line kind of face, meant to be seen only from way up high. And apparently, within the left eye of this main face, some see a smaller image. Looks like Jesus, or maybe a gray alien.
Wow. Faces within faces. It's getting complex.
It is. One explanation offered in the source was purely theoretical. Imagine needing to mark a planet's surface, but you don't have a grid system. How do you leave a clear marker?
Like a signpost for visitors.
Kind of. The analogy was leaving transportation signs, like train tracks. The argument was, what's the most universally recognizable meme you could carve? Your own face.
Your own face as a cosmic hello. That's creative.
Very. So the conclusion wasn't, it's definitely aliens, but more like something weird is there visually. We don't know what, but it exists, which adds to the whole Antarctica mystery.
And they mentioned disinformation too, right? Fake anomalies.
Yeah, acknowledging that's always a possibility, that the Antarctic face itself, real or not, has become a powerful meme in the attention war. Gets people talking.
So natural, artificial, maybe deliberately faked, whatever it is, it definitely sparks curiosity about Antarctica.
It certainly does. It's a reminder that even our own planet still holds a lot of unknowns, potentially.
Well, this has been quite the journey. From YouTube algorithms and war kitties to faces in Antarctica. It's amazing how these discussions can weave together technology, society, perception, even metaphysics.
Absolutely. We really tried to pull out those core insights you were looking for, those bits of knowledge you can grab onto quickly, and maybe find some of those aha moments.
I think we definitely hit some of those. So here's a final thought for everyone listening. How might you look at your own online life differently if you really considered the algorithms and the motivations behind what you see? And on the flip side, what possibilities open up in your mind if that Antarctic face isn't just ice and shadow? Worth pondering, maybe doing some more digging on your own.